Hi folks, and welcome back to Fishing with Den. This time we're going to be looking at knots again, and this is part 3 of my video series on the knots you need to know to make the most of your fishing. And this time we're going to be looking at the knotless knot. Of course, for anyone that's heard of the knotless knot, you'll know that's used with a hair rig. And the hair is just a piece of line that comes down off the bottom of the hook, and you put your bait onto the hair instead of onto the hook itself. Now that'll all become clear in a second, but we should point out that there are probably 3 variations that I'll show you today on how to tie different types of hair for different ways of fishing it. For example, there'll be the basic loop, we'll use a speed stop, and we'll also use a little pellet band. As I say, those are probably the main 3. There are other options that you can use, but those are the ones we're going to stick with for today. So the first thing you need to be aware of then is that we're going to use an eyed hook. And not only that, the eye of the hook has to be swept backwards from the point. It definitely doesn't want to face forwards like that, because that'll ruin the knot altogether. So what we'll do is we'll tie the knot first of all on this rather large hook so you can see it, and then I'll start tying it onto something like a size 14, which is more the sort of size that we'd be using. So if I take this line and just pass it through the eye, I'm not going to tie a hair on this one. This is just literally the basic knot. So I'm going to leave myself a tag end, and then holding the hook and the line, just pass it around the shank a few times. So that's 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. And now obviously this is a big hook, and I obviously could go a lot further down, but for the purposes of putting the hook on, just take the end of the line, pass it back through, and then just pull tight. Okay, make sure that you've got the line tucked right up under the eye, pull tight, and then take your scissors and just take off the tag end. Now you'll notice with this one that the hook actually sits down pretty much straight, and that's the reason why we use this turned back eye. So that's the basic knot. So let's now show you how to tie the variations I was talking about earlier. Obviously for those I'm going to use the size 14 hook, as I've just said. This was purely for demonstration purposes, but hopefully you get the idea of exactly how it works. The first variation is a simple loop, overhand loop, which you can tie by hand, or if you want to, you can do a figure of 8 knot using a loop tire. Entirely up to you. Doesn't have to be too small, but we just have to cut the tag end off. And that's our loop. I've got probably 30 centimeters or so of line. So now if I take my size 14 hook, pass the end through the eye of the hook, and then bring it up until you're fairly close, like that. Now, the length of this hair actually depends on what you're going to put on it. If you want to put something like a boilie on, or something like this dog biscuit, then you want it to sit sort of about like that, so that the knot is just on the bend of the hook. And then as before, we're bringing it around a few times. Not necessarily going to count on this occasion. What I'm going to do is just try and get the line as far as possible down the shank, and I'll explain why in a second. Just reposition my fingers a sec. Get it to come down so it's pretty much in line with the point. Then trap it and pass it back through the eye of the hook again. Pull it and dress it up as before, and then pull tight. So there's your loop. And if I decide I want to put on this dog biscuit, what you do is put the dog biscuit onto this needle. This has got a barb on it. I've drilled a hole in the dog biscuit, put it in and pull it on. Then you can buy dumbbell stops and stuff like that, or V-shaped stops. This is just a piece of an elastic band, or you could even use a piece of straw from the riverbank or the lakeside. But basically, that's the first variation done. Length of line depends on what you're doing. If it's a method feeder, it could be 4 inches. If it's something else, it could be a lot longer. But there's your basic first variation. This second variation on the hair rig for the knotless knot is using these pellet bands. So we'll take off one of the bands, as I've done here, and we'll pass the line through it and just create a straightforward overhand loop. And pull it down towards the band, but you don't want to be getting too tight. Just to about, probably there is good. Tighten up with a needle and take off the tag end. So that's the loop with the pellet band inside it. Now we're going to take the hook, thread it on exactly as before, from the bottom at the back, pull it up, and we're now going to get that loop, or that knot rather, pretty close to the eye of the hook, like that. Not all the way up. And we should find that the pellet band is actually hanging 1 millimeter or 2 off the shank. Go around once above that knot that you've just made, or even twice, and then go to the other side of it and just whip down in the usual way until you get as close as you can to the point. Like that. Now, take the end of the line, put it through the back of the eye again, pull tight, dress it up, and we've now got the pellet band on 1 millimeter or 2 from the hook. It's hanging nicely, and we can now put in the pellets. You could use a pellet bander for this, but for smaller ones it's pretty easy just to put them on like that. And so that is variation 2. Just stop that shaking for you. The final variation uses these speed stops. These are made by Guru, but there's all sorts of manufacturers out there. They may be called speed stops or quick stops or whatever, but they're all doing the same job. Basically, all they are is just a little peg which is threaded onto the hook length line. As before, we're going to just create an overhand loop, but this time it's going to be a little bit tighter than before. And to do that, we're going to use the tool, oops, to just pull it down to the actual speed stop. And then when you pull tight, your speed stop actually moves, as you can see. Again, take off the tag end. It is important that the speed stop can move like this, so you want it to be a fairly slack knot without being as big as the previous one. Take the hook, exactly the same as before, through the back of the hook, the eye, and this time the length of the hair depends on what you're going to put on it. Now I'm going to pretend that this one is for 2 pieces of sweet corn, so about that much hanging over seems about right to me. And again, I'm going to whip down all the way as far as I can until I get to around about the point. Then I'm going to just lock it in my fingers, and I'm going to take the line again through the back of the eye of the hook and pull tight. As before, dress up, pull tight again, and now we've got the final version of the hair. And the way this works is you put your needle into the back of the speed stop, like that. Make sure it's on properly. And then just push on the sweet corn. And again for the second one. And then just pull it down. And that is the third and final rig. All pretty easy and straightforward. So in summary then, here's the basic knot on a big hook, and you can use it on a big hook if you want to. In Australia and America, places like that, they call that snelling a hook, and it's a perfectly good way of doing it. This time we've got the straightforward loop. This is the band, and here we've got the speed stop holding on the sweet corn. Hopefully that's covered everything for you, and you can now go out and confidently use the knotless knot. And don't forget folks, you can always hit the subscribe button and click the notifications bell to get lots more videos from my channel.